It's the Fightful MMA Holy Smokes podcast with Showdown Joe and Sean Ross Sapp.
What's up, everybody? It is the Tuesday, June 6th edition of the Fightful MMA podcast. Oh my goodness, do we have lots to talk about today? Sean Ross Sapp here. I don't know what he's wearing. I got my WEC shirt on, ladies and gentlemen. Never forget the WEC. Old school Dave Schaller sent me a bunch of stuff a while back. But speaking of Dave Schaller, a guy that he dealt with a long time ago, Sean, Demetrious Johnson. First things first, how are you, sir?
I'm good. My mic was muted, but I'm not wearing a WEC shirt because I'm not a mark like you. Instead, the 1992 United States of America Dream Team. How about that one?
How can you not love the WEC and all it brought us, including the man that we will talk about right off the top of the show here, who has raised his fair share of headlines over the past 48 hours.
Kentucky-born!
Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson is not happy with the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He posted a diatribe of diatribes, just basically giving us a behind-the-scenes view, a dirty laundry list of stuff, of issues he's had with the UFC, with the matchmaking team, and obviously what I believe is Dana White potentially getting personal with Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. I mean, what do you think of all this?
If you've been in the media or really known anybody that has competed in the UFC and had extended conversations with Dana White, as you have, you know that this type of thing has happened before. Maybe people just weren't as willing to speak up as Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson is. Do I think Demetrious Johnson is right? Yeah, I would. If I were to put like a meter of right to wrong, I'd put Demetrious up there about 90%. There are a few things where the UFC could say, well, it's up to us, and that's true. There's so much to dissect in this. We're going to spend a lot of time on this because I think it's a conversation that needed to happen, and it's a big thing. It's a big moment. Demetrious Johnson should have been one of those faces with whatever Fighters Association was planned, because this is that type of situation. Them telling him who he's supposed to fight, well, that's one thing. Then switching it, that's another thing. Then switching it back, that's another thing. There are so many facets to this, Joe. I'm really excited to talk about it, honestly.
Listen, this is a topic that's been discussed at length over, maybe not at length, but in terms of a variety of podcasts, not just ours, but over the years. It is something that has always, and I think we're just getting closer and closer to these fighters beginning to band together, with the exception of one caveat, Sean. The people that speak out the most are the ones that have the money. They're the ones that are making more money. They're the ones that can say, you know what, I've got some money aside. I can live pretty good should this end right now. Demetrious Johnson has made some coin, and he's been very smart with his money, to my understanding. The issue now is that he's had enough. And you and I, you came up with some really good ideas for the UFC mass marketing machine to get behind Demetrious Johnson, because he's such a small fighter. You know, it's the old Texas adage, we like everything big in Texas. Well, it's also an American adage where, bigger is better. Demetrious Johnson is a small guy, but arguably the best pound-for-pound fighter in the sport right now. He's set to break a title defense record. The kid is absolutely magical whenever he competes. He's absolutely fantastic. But, that hammer that is Dana White, he's had enough. He's tired of being bullied. Now, do you want to take, people can take the side of the UFC if they like and say, look, this is our organization. We're not MMA. We're the UFC. So the UFC, you work for us. We tell you who you're going to fight, because this is what's going to be beneficial for us. I don't know how Ray Borg versus Demetrious Johnson is beneficial to the UFC as opposed to Demetrious fighting TJ, but Demetrious has made some valid points. TJ's never fought at the division. He's never made the weight. You're putting my legacy at stake here by a guy not making weight that I'll then still have to fight, and if I beat him, it does nothing. So I'm sacrificing all this. You guys aren't behind the flyweight division. You're not marketing us. Demetrious has a lot of valid points here.
If I'm TJ Dillashaw and I really want this fight, I start cutting weight tomorrow. I take a video of myself hitting 125 on the nose, then say, oh, who you running from, Demetrious? Even if Demetrious isn't running from anybody, you drum that up. The situation that occurred was Demetrious Johnson went to the UFC and said, let's book a fight against Sergio Pettis. He has a name, particularly his last name. He's on an impressive win streak. Let's do it. The UFC said, no, we want to go with Ray Borg, who I have said the biggest opportunity Ray Borg has to be marketable is if the UFC tells him to eliminate the A from his name so he can be Ryborg, and maybe they can get some confusion buys out of it. That's really his only chance.
I like it.
He's won 2 in a row. He missed weight against Luis Smolka. He missed weight against Gene Herrera. So he's won 3 of 4 and actually made flyweight in 1 win. 1 win over that 4-fight winning streak. He has made flyweight twice in 2 years, 2.5 years or so. I understand. He's an okay guy to put in there because he beat Smolka. He beat Formiga. Definitely worthy of a title shot in that regard. Can he make the weight? That's also questionable because he was like at 129 against Smolka. So after Demetrious Johnson said, okay, I'll fight Ray Borg, they said, no, we want you to fight TJ Dillashaw. And he says, well, if I'm going to do that, I would much rather just face Cody Garbrandt. Understandable. That's a champion. Cody Garbrandt says he can make it to 125. To me, it's not like Demetrious Johnson is turning these things down without a better solution. He offered better solutions. Even though he accepted the fight with Ray Borg, he also said, I'd rather face Sergio Pettis. I think that would be the better fight. I think that would be better for numbers. If you want me to fight Dillashaw, I'd like him to make weight. Yeah, definitely.
I'd like him to compete in the division.
And he says it's more about him making the weight, showing he can make the flyweight limit than anything. And if he also said, give me Garbrandt instead, give me the champion. Let me break this record, which they know is important to him. And here's the real concerning thing. He claims that Dana White threatened to scrap the entire flyweight division. That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, but it's very believable.
It's 100% believable because when Dana gets hot, and he'll just say stuff because he doesn't have any sort of... There are no real repercussions when Dana White goes off. It doesn't matter. He's always been that way. He doesn't care. Above all, I mean, if we step aside for one moment and take a look at who Dana White is and where he came from, I mean, you're talking about a guy now that's got hundreds of millions of dollars. His net worth is absolutely astronomical in comparison to the average Joe. He's not going to lose that money anytime soon unless he keeps going and playing the blackjack tables. I mean, that'll get him in trouble all day long. But at the same time, he doesn't care what he says. He could say whatever he wants. Post right now on the live chat saying, he's a promoter and he's got to sell bullshit. He's a spin doctor. He will always be a spin doctor. And what Dana White says to the media, what Dana White says in interviews, whether it's large outlets, be it ESPN or whatever, people are going to consume that. And whether they believe it or not, they will take it as true. They'll say Dana White said this. This is what we should be thinking or talking about. When he comes out after Demetrious said, I don't want to fight TJ Dillashaw. If you want me to fight TJ Dillashaw, here's what makes sense to me for my career and for the division. And Dana said no, and then goes out and apparently says to the media, Demetrious Johnson's fighting TJ Dillashaw next. And Demetrious right away posts, no, that's not what I said. Now you're bullying me through the media. So Dana White can say and do and basically do whatever he wants because he can. We allow him to do that. Everyone allows him to do that. He's just going to do it because he doesn't care. And he'll do whatever he can to get his way. This is not the first time he has gone in front of microphones and cameras and voiced his opinion when he's been potentially wrong. I've seen him be wrong numerous times, but it doesn't matter. You know why? Because there's a card in Auckland this Saturday. It doesn't matter because there's something happening next week. It doesn't matter because another fighter is going to be stupid and get nailed with performance-enhancing drugs. Stories will always override Dana White. And his availability, and Mike Straw, who's on the live chat right now, knows that his availability is limited now. Back in the day when I was with Sportsnet covering the Ultimate Fighting Championship, I had exclusives with Dana White every single time I went down to cover an event. He would come to the station whenever he was in Canada, he was in Toronto. After events, there was always a scrum. That has changed. Dana White's available for a limited amount of time after the event, and this is the time when we can ask questions. So, for example, if he's only available once a week, if he's going to be at the event, he may not be in Auckland. He may not be at these international events in Singapore. He may only be available in North America in general. So that's the only time we can get a hold of him. The amount of stories that will lead up to asking that question, this Demetrious Johnson situation could die off by the next time we see him.
I wonder if the Dana White scrum situation, I think that has a lot to do with the antitrust lawsuit that happened, and they didn't want him slipping up and saying some stuff he shouldn't say. But how does this play into situations like that where, and you'll have a lot of people saying, well, you work for the UFC. Yeah, but you're an independent contractor. Ultimately, you're an independent contractor. And that's where these fighters have room to say who they should fight and stuff like that. Do I think that any champion should fight the rightful contender? Yeah, but we live in a world where GSP was given a middleweight title fight for a while, where Dan Henderson was given a middleweight title fight, where the guy who has the middleweight title was like a last-minute replacement. So, I mean, things happen. Rarely do things always go according to plan. Rarely do things go according exactly the way the UFC planned it. And there are even more facets to this because Demetrious talks about how they don't market the flyweight division. They don't. I would really, really embrace marketing that division. Really little guys that can beat the shit out of everybody that they would walk up to on the street. I mean, there are people that have, like, for better or for worse, there are people who think they can beat up Mighty Mouse Johnson.
Oh, legit.
Play off of it.
I get it all the time. Yeah.
Play off of it. Play off of people's fears, off of their joy. Play off of anything that makes them dislike or like a Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson or a Sergio Pettis or a John Moraga or anybody. Now, those aren't the most marketable dudes, but embrace it as a whole. I would do the same thing with the women. These women could take a lot of the men that they would encounter on the street. Embrace that. Market them. Think of something creative. That's why you have these departments.
Listen, I don't think it would take anybody an ounce of a pill of rocket scientism to promote this division. It's not that difficult. You've just come up with a fantastic idea. It's an idea that you came up with about a month and a half ago on the podcast. It's not rocket science. It can be done. Why they choose not to is a tad baffling, because you do have a fighter who arguably may go down, Sean, as the greatest of all time. He's got that opportunity.
Joe, they had some people convinced that Ronda Rousey would be a high-level professional boxer. They had people convinced based on some pad-hitting videos with Edmund Taverdian. Raquel Pennington had to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure, so she wouldn't talk about the sparring session. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, that's common. Now, come on. It's not as common as they would like you to think. It happens here and there, but they had people really thinking that she was in there sparring with male top-level boxers and holding her own. But you think they can't promote a guy who is a one-man wrecking machine at 125 pounds? I brought it up over and over again. He toyed with an Olympic medalist. Like, he did whatever he wanted to do. He beat up Kyoji Horiguchi and said, I'm going to tap you out with 1 second left, and there's nothing you can do about it.
That was epic.
Like, he does whatever he wants. I think there's an extreme amount of marketability in a guy who is 125 pounds, 5'3", and no matter what you want to do, I don't care who you are on the streets, maybe for a trained MMA fighter, whatever he wants to do to you, he can. If he wants to make you kiss the soles of your feet, you're doing it. I would play off of that. Like, it's funny because some of my pro wrestling viewers criticize me for bringing up MMA because a lot of the times when the UFC does it right, when they build a fighter, they do it right. But there's a good pro wrestling example here. In the late 90s, pro wrestling was the land of the giants. Everybody was big. They were roided out. They were juiced. They were 6.5 feet tall. ECW had to make good with what they had, and they had a 5'7" Taz. And Vince McMahon wanted him because they built him so well. He called them Taz was their sawed-off monster. Like, who would just destroy everybody. Didn't matter how big they were. Like, to really put over how badass this dude was, they actually had Paul Varlins come in and get tapped out by Taz in an ECW match. Why can't Demetrious Johnson be that sawed-off monster? That's exactly what he is. It's remarkable to me how they can't market this guy. Unbelievable.
So it brings me to a point that I had conversations with some people in the industry, specifically off air, a lot of them off the record. I mean, all signs are pointing to this. I mean, I'm not stating nothing that doesn't appear obvious, but this is personal for Dana White. He's made this personal. This is not a business decision, which is sort of crazy because Dana White is all about business. But I know one thing about Dana White. People have always asked me, what's Dana White like? And I told them flat out, Dana White's a great guy unless you mess with his business. So something tells me that Demetrious Johnson is messing with Dana White's business, and Dana White's now made it personal. Because Dana White, in the blink of an eye, can walk in the morning into the I almost called it Zuffa offices. Can walk into the UFC offices. I don't want to give the alphabet speech again, but can walk into those offices, sit at his desk, and just say, you know what? We're going to promote Demetrious Johnson. You know what? We're going to promote this division, and we're going to make a lot more money in doing so. He chooses not to. There's something there that has to be personal for him to say, you know what? Screw you, Demetrious Johnson. As a matter of fact, screw you so much. Screw you and your division and everyone that likes your division. The hell with you in this division. This is a personal thing that Dana White has now gotten emotional about, because if he was to remove his emotion from this, you can make Demetrious Johnson, and there are so many different ways. You can make it as cheesy as you want. You can get those, what do they have at the Athlete Summit there, that punch box meter thing where they're punching things.
Yeah.
Bring on 250-pound average Joes to punch at this thing, and then let Demetrious Johnson punch. Do anything and everything that the average Joe can do, and watch Demetrious Johnson do it better. And then have these guys spar with Demetrious Johnson. Whatever you want. Demetrious Johnson will embarrass 99.9% of the average Joe public, as someone could get lucky. Let's be honest, Sean. I mean, that's just life. But the fact of the matter is, you could make this, like you said, sawed-off giant a superhero, a modern-day superhero. You can.
His nickname's Mighty Mouse, for the love of God.
I was just going to get to that.
Here's a fun fact, Joe. As I'll talk about the similarities between pro wrestling and MMA, because in this regard, it's important. You got to build somebody. That's all pro wrestling is. For decades, Vince McMahon has wanted a Mighty Mouse character, like that he could model as the little guy who overcomes. And traditionally, he hates little guys, but he's always wanted that one guy. The UFC has what he wanted. Did you know the WWE made a play for Henry Cejudo to be that, and he turned them down? Yeah, before the UFC. So not only does the UFC have a guy that WWE wanted, but the guy that they have and is their big star beat the living shit out of that guy that the WWE wanted. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Demetrious also makes a really good point when he said, how many other sports leagues or entities out there have a star, a number one star, someone that is just the greatest at what they do, and they do nothing to promote them? He's bang on. He's 100% bang on. I mean, we're starting to connect some dots here. You know, it's starting to realize, wait a second, this has gone more. This is perhaps not just Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson's fault, as many times we've had the conversation of, hey, Demetrious, you got to get out there more. You got to do this. Well, hold on. Maybe he hasn't been allowed to get out there and do more. When we think that Sage Northcutt or Paige Van Zant or whomever from the UFC is out there doing more, it's because the UFC says you need to do this, do that, do this, do this. You're going to become a star. But they don't do it for Demetrious Johnson.
And I have never seen a more complete fighter in my entire life.
He's perfect.
His size plays a role in that because he's just unbelievable. And the thing is, the old bag on him used to be, well, he can't finish. He can't finish. That you can't say that anymore. You can't say that anymore. The two people over the past, 3 years he hasn't finished are John Dodson and Tim Elliott, who Tim Elliott seems to be a bit of an enigma in and out of the cage. So, sure, but he's very special, and he needs to be treated as special. And there's this argument about whether or not he could be a free agent if they scrap the division. They're not going to scrap the division. There's no way they can now. Not since DJ put this out there. And I don't think they would have anyway. I think it was one of those little threats. But
no, it's hot-headed. Dana just being hot-headed. Vinny Fernando just posted something awesome. Stefan Struve eating Swedish food is more important than promoting one of their champions, apparently.
Yeah. And
it's just ridiculous. I love Stefan. I see him all the time. Not all the time. I see him often now when I do the Titan FC shows. But it's so true. At this point here, after rereading, I read it once and I read it a second time earlier today before we came on the air. I read Demetrious's rant, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. It's crazy. Things need to change. I mean, Dana was hot-headed when he said that to Demetrious. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's how Dana gets. I've seen it before. I've been the victim of a Dana White rant on an occasion or two where I just looked at the guy and said, well, I got to keep my mouth shut because I'm about to lose my job if I dare speak up. So I'm kind of just looking at him going, all right, you want to be that way? I'll figure this out. And we hashed it out. I told the story before. We've hashed it out, but I was at the point where you can't talk to me like that. That's just, you could be hot-headed with whoever you want, but I didn't do anything to you. You're just being crazy. You're being irrational right now. And I think when Dana White gets put in a corner, or when he has someone that actually stands up to him, you stand up to the bully starts freaking out. And I think that's what's happened here.
You can't be like that and be in control. You can't do that. It does not work. Me and Jimmy Van disagree with each other all the time about things. Directions of the site, who should be on, what we should do, anything, content. But one of us can't be hot-headed and him just be like, oh, you don't like my idea, I'm shutting down the whole site. Like, I don't like this writer, I'm going to shut down the entire MMA wing of the site. Okay, that doesn't happen. I can't, and I'm glad that Demetrious Johnson brought it to light that it did happen with him in this situation, because I feel like Demetrious Johnson is pretty transparent. He's not the type of guy that people,
exactly.
when he says things that people are like, oh, well, I question that. It's not like a Conor McGregor where people think maybe he's blowing smoke. It's not a Diaz thing where people are like, well, that's the Diaz brothers being Diaz. Not the Chael Sonnen thing where people think, well, is he lying or not? This is Demetrious Johnson who, as best we know, hasn't ever really had any issues with telling the truth. And why should he? He's kicking everybody's ass. What's he got to lie about? He has said on numerous occasions, I need my sponsors. I need my money. Give me my money. I want my money. Give me my money. He's not made any bones about where his allegiances lie. It's his wallet and his family, as it should be for a prize fighter. And his legacy. That's his prerogative. So there's no real reason to doubt Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, but somebody will believe anybody. There's always that thing like, Joe, if I came on here right now and I said, Helio Gracie just came back to life and told me he was going to fight next month, there'd be at least one fool that was like, wow, science really developed over the last 24 hours, didn't it? I can't believe this is happening. I'm glad Demetrious Johnson brought this to light. Now there is the argument that he should fight whoever they ask him to, but I don't think he's being unreasonable in this regard. I don't think that it's out of the realm of like reason that he says, I would like to make sure that this guy makes weight because I'm going to train for this fight to break a record. And if he prevents me from breaking that record, that hurts me. That hurts my wallet. That hurts my family. That hurts my legacy. That hurts a lot of things. I don't want to go in there and fight a guy who shows up at 1:30, I lose, and it affects my pocketbook down the line. I think that's completely understandable.
I'm looking at Demetrius's arguments and points and saying, I don't really see anything that's unfair. Now, we've heard it before. There's this side of the story, that side of the story, the truth somewhere in the middle. Based on your analogy and what I'm saying is I think it's skewed over to Demetrious is because all of a sudden he's decided to voice everything out. I mean, it remains to be seen if anyone can get a hold of Dana White, because I've tried and nothing happened. It remains to be seen if he's going to voice his opinion on this. And we all know we have to take it with a grain of salt, because just take a look at this live chat on the screen. Guys, and girls, keep posting your stuff there. We're reading it as we go along here. If you see my eyeballs moving over this way, it's because I'm reading it. It's on the top right of my screen. But Dana White, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, and technically Sean Ross Sapp, there's nothing wrong with it. Dana White is a spin doctor. That is his job. That is part of the job of being a promoter. You are a spin doctor. Your job is to spin it so you get more sales for pay-per-views. You are there to spin it to make any and every fighter, cough, cough, Ronda Rousey, appear to be absolutely the greatest thing ever. That's just how it is. Okay, I get it. But I'd like to see what Dana White's positioning on this is right now. Someone get a camera in front of him, or let's hear an interview. It might happen on UFC Unfiltered. I don't know, but I'd love to hear it and see what he has to say. He may just go off, but it's up to us, every single one of our individuals that are listening to me right now and watching me right now. It is up to you to determine whether you choose to read between the lines or not and believe or disbelieve Dana White.
Yeah, it needed to be said. Dana White's doing what he does. The threatening to pull the division, we could always do without that. Joe, however, we did speak to a guy who's fighting next month, specifically. You did, actually, about this situation, about his training camp, about a lot of different things. It's our old buddy, Elias Theodorou. He's still a part of the Fightful family, you guys. Check this out. I think Joe spoke with him for about 10 minutes about any number of things, including UFC 212 in Brazil.
Well, as always, it's a pleasure. People always, especially Sean Ross Sapp, yells, "Ya boy," whenever he mentions Elias Theodorou, and yours truly. Glad to have him back here on the Holy Smokes podcast. Elias, how are you, sir?
Fantastic. A little skinnier than when we last met, last saw each other, but doing great.
You're getting close to the fight, or getting closer to the fight. How's the training camp for Brad Tavares going?
Good. Every single day, just chipping away at it. Again, when you start a training camp, in many ways, it's a spaghetti rule. You throw everything on the wall and see what sticks. And at this point, with about 5-6 weeks out, I know what the game plan is, and I'm just doing it every single day.
The game plan itself, obviously, you're not going to have to. Not asking you to give anything away. Did it change from before training camp started to after, and you realize, oh, wait a second, got to work on this, got to work on that, or did you already have an inclination, like, you know what, I already know what I'm going to do with this guy?
Well, I have my style, obviously. I think in many ways, there's obviously that base that comes in there beforehand, but there's specific things that kind of get added throughout, and certain like principles that I just kind of work on throughout the camp. And let's say if it was getting to take a certain amount of takedowns every round, getting a certain amount of attacks every round, whatever the case may be. It's just certain tenets, principles throughout camp that I just kind of follow.
You posted on your Instagram, for those that don't know, at Elias Theodorou. USADA came for a visit. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, no, it was actually funny because for whatever reason, they didn't, there was some kind of like mix up. They couldn't find my place, and they called me. They're like, can you come in? And then I was like, yeah. So it was a weird little mix up in regards to, they couldn't find my actual house, and TriStar is right next to it. So they're like, well, can you just come in? Because we couldn't find you. And I was like, yeah, no problem. So I helped out USADA this time around.
When you say, can you just come in? Like, I don't understand. Go to the gym?
Go to the gym. Yeah. Cause they were going to go to the gym anyways. And they were going to, test me for that point of time anyways. They were just like, okay, well, we couldn't find you, so we were just going to test you. And I couldn't train in the afternoon yesterday. I had to do an early session anyways. So I was like, I'm coming in anyways, so I'll do this. So it kind of worked out.
Was it urine and blood or both?
Just urine.
Oh my gosh, I don't even want to know how that works. They follow you into the bathroom?
One fake cock ruined it for everyone.
That's terrible. Oh my goodness. But overall, so I am taking a look. I see you're training with Crew Ash. In terms of the training camp, is it the same as the last few where you kind of balance within TriStar and obviously lockdown here?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. I've been doing much of my camp here. Obviously, with someone like Misha and a couple of my other training partners down in Toronto who just recently had fights. Obviously, the need to be here where there's many more, bodies to work with. Obviously, Faraz, Kurash, like you mentioned. I had Auckland, Chad Pearson come down along with my performance coach, Tony Ricci, who also came down as well. We're starting to use, it's called Polar Beat. It's really interesting. I've been putting up some really good numbers in regards to just like my volume, my attacks, basically my pace, and now we're actually putting some actual data behind it. I'm doing ridiculous amounts of punching and kicking every single round, and my heartbeat, and we're actually understanding more of my ability to recover. Part of my pace and my ability to put on the pace is just my recovery time. I can go from like 190 beats down to what's it called, 80 in the matter of seconds.
Very cool. Did you say Sean Pearson?
Chad Pearson.
Chad Pearson. I'm going to say, because Sean Pearson and I have been talking about him. He's always talking about being a professional athlete. I'm like, whoa, you just picked up the pace if you went to go train with the Elias. But okay, Chad Pearson, I understand. You mentioned Misha Serkinov. How's he doing?
A little bit of chatting with him. He's obviously doing a tour. I think he went, or he's going around Europe right now. So, he's holding his head up. Obviously, he doesn't know. It's one of those things where it's the punch that you don't see gets you. And obviously, he didn't see it coming, and it just turned out the lights. He doesn't really know what happened. But I know with his, dedication and passion for the sport, I know he'll be someone that'll be able to come back stronger than ever.
Well, you talk about someone that has a passion for the sport. Demetrious Johnson has professed that he is a company man. He's done everything the UFC has ever asked of him, but now he's posted a fairly large diatribe with his problems with the UFC, with his issues with Dana White, and all of that. Have you had a chance to read what Demetrious Johnson posted and your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I read it. I've seen what he's done on a couple of the interviews that he's done. That's his point of view, and I understand where he's coming from. Obviously, unfortunately, it's one of those things where he's about to break the record of title defenses, and it's one of those things where someone like Sage Northcutt might get a little bit more publicity than him. So I can understand his gripe. He has been a company man. We've all seen him jump on, take a fight when the promotion asked him to, because injury or fallout at the top of the card. And yes, he might not be one of the top sellers in regards to pay-per-views. Not too many casual fans watch his fights specifically for his fights, but that could be just a case of the way he's been marketed. The UFC has a huge following, and if they turn on that hose on you, you can definitely get that shine. Obvious example is someone like Paige Van Zandt and Sage. You know what I mean? They've only had a certain amount of fights, and a lot of that is the marketing aspect. That's been kind of put it on them.
Makes sense. Speaking of guys that have lots of love, and I wanted to bring this up because you and I are both Canadian. I spoke with Frank Trigg, and we discussed the fact that Yancy Medeiros and Max Holloway from Hawaii, when Yancy Medeiros competed and he emerged victorious in his town, fireworks went off. They basically had fireworks set up for the victory. So that and obviously we know Hawaii is an island. So when you see the fireworks at that side of the island, Yancy won. And of course, when Max Holloway emerged victorious, became the new featherweight champion, fireworks went off on his side of the island. It's amazing how the Hawaiians get behind their fighters. Obviously, it's an island. It's a smaller area. Canada's big in terms of what you and I have to go through and stuff like that. Don't you ever wish something like that could happen in Canada for the fighters?
Well, I think we have a very passionate fighters. Obviously, if fireworks did go off in Toronto and then went off in Calgary, no one would see it because it's just so much bigger. So I think we have very passionate fight fans. I think you and I have been frustrated almost at the point where the idea that obviously we are very, very diehard fans, and we need some love too.
Absolutely. Listen, we want to thank you very much for your time. We know you're in Montreal. I can tell by the background. I'm not sure if you're more of a clean freak than me. You got Purex back there. You got Lysol wipes. I'm forever cleaning my desk, and sometimes I think I can leave it for a couple of days, but it is what it is.
No, I'm in the transition. What's it called? This place I'm actually getting rid of at the end of the month. Basically, getting I'm actually going to buy a place down here. That's the game plan. After my next fight, so everything's kind of like slowly being put away and tossed away. So it's one of those things. So I'm a little embarrassed that you could see all of that.
Never be embarrassed for being clean, my friend. You know that. I know that. It's actually very good. The ladies love it when a gentleman is clean.
Yes, but not the dead plant in the background. I've been bouncing around a lot, and that poor bastard's dead.
We thank you very much for your time. We'll hopefully catch up with you leading up to the fight there, and maybe perhaps we over here at Fightful MMA and the Holy Smokes podcast can probably get to Las Vegas to help cheer you on. But we thank you once again for your time.
All right. Well, there's always Friday night and Saturday night and Sunday night to enjoy and celebrate. Hey, there might be fireworks.
Despite his absolute garbage haircut, Elias is kind of cool.
You wish. You keep flying. You just running through. No, I don't know.
It's gonna get there.
I guess I shouldn't be making any comments regarding people that have hair, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Always good to hear from him. Just about a month away from facing Brad Tavares at International Fight Week. That's something I wanted to ask you.
Yep.
Last 2 years, International Fight Week has lost pretty big fights. Now, I'm of the belief they should have just moved International Fight Week to the end of the month this year.
Well, okay. I gotcha.
Just for the Jones DC fight.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. I think that the plan originally, when they did the first few, obviously was to circle it around the American holiday, right? If I'm not mistaken, it's Independence Day for you guys down there, July 4th. Is that called Independence Day? So that's what they would, basically center it around. There's so many people coming to Las Vegas. Let's take advantage of all the people here. And they're always looking for something to do. You need to come to a UFC event. You also need to come to the UFC Fan Expo. You need to do this and that and blah, blah, blah. So that's where they, the original idea came from. So I get it. I understand it. They've lost some fights, like you mentioned. It is a fantastic time. Not just for, I'll say this. If you're a fan of the UFC, man, International Fight Week is it. It is unbelievable how incredible. You, as a fan, you cannot do everything. You can't be at every single thing. You could try, but literally every single day of your 4 days in Vegas, if you go for 4 days, every hour has something to do with the UFC. That's how busy they make it. Now imagine you're media and your job is to cover all the different things, but you've got, I don't know, Rashad Evans available at this side of town, John Jones available at this side of town. There's a half an hour or 1 hour difference between getting from there to there, or then you got Daniel Cormier, and then you got George St. Pierre here. Then you got all these people at the expo that are available to you if you want to go then. If not, you got to go. It's always mayhem, but it was so much fun. You're beyond exhausted, Sean, beyond exhausted by the time it's fight night. And then you go through a full fight night. You do what you got to do that very first night. The fight's over. You cover it, blah, blah. And then you finally go to sleep only to do it again the following day with the Ultimate Fighter finale.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds pretty damn crazy. And they cut down International Fight Week. You don't have the back-to-back-to-back nights anymore. Remember that? Our first week of Fightful last year was International Fight Week. So Joe and I, who typically never do more than 2 shows together a week, I think we did 4 or 5 that week because we did each night, and then we did a preview. I know sometime around that week, I did a breaking news on the John Jones failure.
Yep.
It was insane. It was absolutely nuts. And I remember our first podcast, we were like, we like to keep these an hour. We went 2 hours, I think, our first show.
Yeah. We'll go 60 minutes is a pretty good average. Yeah. And I'm looking at the time. I'm like, I'm having fun. This is crazy. Yeah, it was cool. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on what Elias was mentioning?
In what regard? He was mentioning a lot of stuff.
Well, obviously, I think he was choosing his words carefully in terms of Demetrious Johnson situation.
Yeah, he was. He doesn't want to get in the UFC's bad graces, but he does have some other stuff going on. But ultimately, fighting is what butters his bread. Now, my favorite thing that he said was talking about USADA and how one fake dick ruined it for everybody. That's a headline. Thanks, Elias. Hey, Pat Fannin, you want to know what your article assignment is? Elias Theodorou, semicolon. One fake cock ruined it for us all. There we go.
Yeah, I specifically wanted to ask him. He's a winner of the Ultimate Fighter Nations, obviously Canada versus Australia. I'll never forget, ever forget, how I felt one day. We went to a preview. It was a Bobby Razak. I think it was the Mask movie premiere, if I'm not mistaken. It may have been that. It was in Toronto, and afterwards we went for dinner, right across from the theater. Little restaurant, whatever. We went there, and people were coming up to me. Hey, Showdown Joe, how you doing? Love your show, and can I get a picture? And I'm sitting there going, I'm looking at Elias. I'm like, do you guys know who this is? Hey, man, how are you? You want to be Showdown Joe's friends or blah? Like, this is the winner of the Ultimate Fighter Canada versus Australia. And him and I, we had a conversation, and I specifically said, the reason why I have in Canada, not in the States, but in Canada, why my popularity was bigger than most of the fighters, with the exception of George St. Pierre and a few others, was because my face is on television every day. They see me every day. 9 o'clock Eastern, I'm on television. Repeats, blah, blah, blah. They see you guys every so often. Mark Bocek. Remember Mark Bocek?
Yeah.
Mark Bocek and I, Rory McDonald and I, we all had this conversation, and it's like, guys, I'm on the screen all the time. That's why they recognize me. But it broke my heart to be sitting next to a guy who's got this incredible character in Elias Theodorou, a winner of the Ultimate Fighter, a guy that we tried to promote nonstop on the TV show and on the news shows, the 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock news shows, which would be like your sports centers. And we did everything we can to promote him, features on the web, but it just didn't resonate yet. So then I asked him specifically, look, we live in a big country. Canada's huge, obviously. Then you get this small island in Hawaii. And the culture down there is that they obviously love their own. Everyone loves their own. That's just a fact. I mean, you take a look at the FIFA World Cup, all of a sudden, it doesn't matter what country you're from or what country you live in, you go back to your roots. I know here, I'm of Italian descent. Canada's not going to make the World Cup. Technically, they're not going to make the World Cup. I'm putting my Italian jersey on. Right, it's the same thing. All the Portuguese come out, all the Brazilians come out, all the English wear their jerseys, all the Americans wear their jerseys. So we love where we're from. We love people that we resonate with. And in Hawaii, they love their own. And Yancy Medeiros, the love Yancy Medeiros was getting, the love that Max Holloway got. I don't know if we have Frank Trigg coming up in the show. I asked him the same question. I don't want to give too much away, Sean, but I just asked Elias, wouldn't it be nice to get that kind of love? And the funny thing when he mentioned that, well, if things go off in Calgary, we're not going to see it in Toronto. It's such a big country. I said, no, it makes total sense. Hawaii is much smaller. But it's amazing what they go through, what they do for their fighters and how much love they have for their fighters. And I just wish it was always like that for every single fighter, where they got back to the airport and they come home to a hero's welcome.
It circles back to what we talked about at the top of the show, marketing. The UFC has failed to market in Canada, which was once their mecca. I remember events in Toronto seemed like it was like WrestleMania. It was huge. There's no reason that can't be the case. You have to book smart, you have to book appropriately, and you have to put on fights that people care about, which we don't necessarily see this Saturday, which is a nice transition into what I'll call UFC Auckland. Because this card is not that, as far as name value, is not that good. Will there be some good fights? Hell yeah, there will be.
Oh, of course there will be. Of course there will be. Am I allowed to say what message you sent me regarding the show, or that's probably not a good idea? I'm kidding. But there are some good fights, though, Sean. I mean, I like some of these fights.
We are doing a post show. I'll just say that. We're doing a post show.
We are doing a post show. But there are names on this show where you're like, have I ever seen this person fight? and you go back and you're like, yep, I saw 3 of their fights. I don't remember a thing about them. I've got to go back and watch all these fights. But the main event is, you and I have joked about this main event being punishment for Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis is doing some pretty good media. I've seen some stuff that he's doing out there. It looks pretty good, but I don't think it changes my mind of the type of character this gentleman is. And he faced Mark Hunt, who he's got 1 foot out the door.
Yeah.
I'm puzzled. I'm puzzled by this main event. Not puzzled. I'm in
punishment for both guys. See, he's like, all right, we'll have you fight out, maximize dollar value by putting you in a head. We're going to put you against Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis should probably get a title shot at this point. He or Ngannou, I think, deserve it.
Yeah.
Although I had one person argue and say that Ngannou doesn't deserve it because not everybody that beats Arlovsky deserves a title shot. And I was like, everybody that used to beat Nogueira got one, so why not? But
That's true.
But Derek Lewis, they're like, okay, you want to talk about Ronda Rousey, our buddy? Well, you're going to get put against Mark Hunt in his home territory. So it's a punishment for both of them, I think, but also a good opportunity for both of them. Because if Derek Lewis beats Mark Hunt, you got to give him the title shot. I don't care what kind of streak Mark Hunt's on. Heavyweight, different story. Good, solid main event. I'll just say that. And not often you will hear me say that a guy who, well, I mean, he's got 3 wins since like in the last 4 years in Mark Hunt, and 3 wins in his last, not 7-9 fights. You won't hear me say, oh, that's a good main event very often. But if it's a guy like Mark Hunt or a guy like Anderson Silva, yeah, I'll be fine with that. I don't even know what's the point of making a prediction on this. Like, why even do it? Because it's...
I will ask you this question. If Mark Hunt has reviewed any tape, perhaps just the last fight of Derek Lewis,
go to the body.
how many body shots is he going to be throwing?
All day. All day, every day. Go to the body. Hell yeah.
And will the UFC be happy if Mark Hunt emerges victorious?
No. Nope. I'm sure that they have told Derek Lewis, maybe shut the hell up about Ronda Rousey, but they want him to win. They want him to win, deep down. Because, I mean, they're facing a lawsuit. They just tried to file for dismissal and it went out the window, so he's suing the hell out of him. Going to be a great fight, though, one way or another. Can't wait for this fight. Also, UFC, pardon me, but go square to hell for running this event at 10 p.m. Eastern for the main card. There was no reason for that. This is in Australia. You ain't got to do that. I would have watched it in the afternoon.
What's the time difference, though? I think is it in 23 hours?
No.
No. That's too much.
Hours.
Where did I come with that? That was just that just came out the wrong way. I think it's 15 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
It's 15 hours.
Okay, yeah.
I know, because I always got to make sure that Anna Bauer, one of our podcast co-hosts, I got to make sure whenever I'm messaging her about assignments and stuff, I have to be like, I hope I don't wake her up. Because it's all backwards. But yeah, they could have ran this local time Australia and it would have been fine, I'm sure.
And the following week they're doing it in Singapore.
Yeah, and that main card starts at 8 a.m. So
yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Needless to say, don't know if we'll be doing that podcast right after the event or not, but yeah. I would like to, because it would be early, but who knows. We got some other fights on this show, though.
Yeah, well, one thing, what's the over-under in your mind for Derek Lewis, Mark Hunt? I'm going to go 2.5 rounds, obviously. I don't think this one goes 3.
Yeah, I don't think it goes 3 either. 2.5 rounds.
Co-main event, Derek Brunson, Dan Kelly. I'm really liking this Dan Kelly story. This sort of, you have no business fighting these guys. You have no business winning. You're not the prototypical, you got a dad's bod, blah, 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 blah. I like this Dan Kelly story now. I'm really starting to like it. I'm getting behind him, and I'm appreciating. You may not like his style. You may not like the way he fights. You may despise his footwork. It's judo. That's how judo guys sometimes, that's how their footwork sometimes happens when you transition to MMA. I love this guy's story. I'm really enjoying it. I like the run that he's on, but he's got a tough guy in Derek Brunson, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's won 6 of 7. If Elias had gotten that fight, that may have been the most hideous fight in the history of the UFC. I love Elias, and he's a great fighter, and so is Dan Kelly. But, man, their styles would have matched up in such a weird manner. I can't imagine how that would have played out. I wanted to see it, though. Not like I wouldn't watch it. I would have loved to have seen it. Derek Brunson, I think Derek Brunson can knock him out, and I think he can probably do it pretty violently. I think that's what will happen. I think that Dan Kelly's probably going to get slept in this fight, despite the recent skid of Derek Brunson. Even if he fought the way he did against Robert Whittaker, Dan Kelly
but that was insane.
Yeah, Dan Kelly is not the technical mastermind that is Robert Whittaker. So, who knows?
Well, Derek Brunson fought Robert Whittaker as if it was a 3-round fight. That was a 5-round fight. So now he's returning to a 3-round fight where he can fight in that manner and be explosive right off the bat and try and knock his head off, right? Big difference. Now, Whittaker obviously is just an immaculate striker in comparison to Dan Kelly. But Dan Kelly may find a way to say, Brunson, come here, as Pearson would always say to us, bring him in and beat the crap out of him. Or control him and take him down. So I wouldn't be surprised. My question, when I look at this and think to myself, if Derek Brunson knocks out Dan Kelly, I want to be a fly in the wall with Rashad Evans and see what goes through his mind or his reaction when he's like, damn, really?
Yeah. Yeah. And as we saw from the Punch Machine stats, Rashad Evans can still hit really hard.
Oh, yeah. He's as athletic as they come. The guy's a specimen. He always looks good. And again, I've seen him before in Florida. He's always looking good. Obviously, it's Father Time that is getting the best of him. He just can't, compete at the level when he was once a champion. He still got it, but I don't know if he's got to pull the trigger more or whatever. Guys that do pull the trigger, they don't care, are Dan Hooker and Ross Pearson. This is going to be a fun fight.
It will be, and this is a recurring theme on events of late. I think Ross Pearson's fighting for his job because for years, he started off in the UFC very hot. Obviously, he won the lightweight tournament on Tough 9. Won 4 of his first 5, beat guys like tough guys like Aaron Riley, Dennis Seaver, Spencer Fisher. He beat some guys that were real tough outs. And over the past several years, it's been win-loss, 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 win-loss. And then since last July, just bam. And not just that, he hasn't been having performance of the nights. He hasn't been having these fights that you look back and you just can't forget. But he lost to Will Brooks and Jorge Masvidal, whichever you want to call him that day, whichever he doesn't get mad about. And Stevie Ray, who makes tough fights out of anything. And Dan Hooker's the same way. Dan Hooker's a guy that fights that same way. So Ross Pearson has a pretty good chance of winning this fight, I think, and preserving his job. But it's one of those backhanded favors the UFC does. We'll give you one more fight, even though you've lost 3 in a row. You've lost 4 out of your last 5. But it's going to be on this guy's turf.
Yeah. Hooker's not fighting for his job, obviously, although he's alternated wins and losses since, 2014.
He'll just have to wait until the next time they go to Australia.
Yeah, unfortunately.
If he loses.
Yeah, I'm actually leaning towards Dan in this fight, believe it or not.
That's another toss-up for me. The Lewis Hunt and the Hooker-Pearson fights are complete toss-ups, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see that argument. Ian Kalaba taking on Henrique da Silva. That's one that people are like, why is this on the main card?
Yeah. This is another puzzling booking for this show because it's on the main card. It's a Brazilian versus a guy from Moldova. And earlier on the card, you have Zakatao or whatever his name is against Kunimoto. Okay, let's put a guy against Wisconsin against a Japanese guy in Australia. That'll put some butts in the seats.
Goes back to this guy that I know. He's a host of a podcast on Fightful. Tons of respect for this kid. He's younger than me by about 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. Full head of hair, nice guy. And he said we're always talking about how can we improve the UFC? Here I am thinking I want the UFC to stop with this average time of 6 hours and 42 minutes. We need to figure out some ways. And this guy, Sean Rossap, says to me last podcast, These Fox shows have to be, or these preliminary fight cards, just 2 fights, 1 hour. And I thought, that's fantastic. Why? You get rid of Kunimoto versus Zakatao.
Yeah.
Or Otto.
Why have it?
Or Odo. Why have it? You're filling up spots. You're filling up space for fights that...
Then you start a main card at 10 p.m., run 6 fights on it, with the first being a featherweight fight, the second being a flyweight fight, the fourth being a lightweight fight against 2 guys who go to decision, despite having pretty exciting styles. Ross Pearson has done nothing but go to decision, like in his last 7 fights. So it's gonna be a long night.
Oh, I hate when you say that. Don't kill our karma. The good news is that I am home for this one. I'm not going out and missing the first 2 or 3 hours only to come home and have Sean Sapp laugh at me saying, yeah, good luck catching up with these 15-minute fights. I'll be home for this one here. Kicking off the main card, obviously. Oh, no. Whoa. The only fight, not the only fight, but the one fight I'm obviously looking forward to, putting on my Titan FC hat, obviously Timothy Elliott, the champion at 125 pounds before he moved over to the Ultimate Fighter, back to the UFC. That's Jose Shorty Torres now, 2-division champ. But Timmy Elliott taking on Ben Nguyen. This is going to be a sick fight, in my opinion.
High level flyweight fight.
You calling a finish within 15 minutes here?
I don't know about that. Man. Ben Nguyen, before he got to the... Well, actually, in the UFC, I remember he tapped out Benoit, and he won his... He knocked gosh, I can't remember his name. Knocked him out at the Australian event in 2015, like with 1 second left, if you remember. And, I mean, this is... A lot of people don't realize...
Ozelich.
Yes.
Ozelich.
Ben Nguyen, I mean, he lives in Australia. So I mean, like, this is like a hometown fight for him, essentially. You would think that would play into his favor. But man, Tim Elliott, you never know what he's going to do. And I just love the way he looked against Demetrious Johnson early. I love the way that he looked against Luis Smoka in April. I love the way that he looked in Titan FC. He got fired from the UFC and just reinvented himself. And now he's a guy that almost everybody looks forward to fighting, or looks forward to seeing fight. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, when I used to call his fights at Titan, holy smokes, was it ever fun. There were times I just have to keep my mouth shut. Just, ladies and gentlemen, just watch this. This guy's crazy. He's a matrix. I can't figure out, you can't speak quick enough for the stuff that he was doing. That's how amazing he was. And like you said, he reinvented himself. He goes back to the UFC and puts on, wins the Ultimate Fighter, and then puts on that fantastic performance versus Demetrious Johnson, going the distance. And then unfortunately, he called it, what did he call it, a turd of a fight?
Yeah.
It wasn't, but it is what it is. Before we move on to the next one, I'm starting to get a bit of a headache right now in looking at the odds for some of these bouts. Unfortunately, most of the books only have the main event and co-main event listed. The rest of the card is not there. That's what even the fans putting money down and the bookies think of this card.
Yeah. Because nobody knows most of the people on the damn show. You got the John Moraga fight, but have you ever heard of the guy he's fighting? No. There's a real chance to make a name for himself, by the way.
Ashkan Mokhtarian?
Yeah, I mean, Moraga is... A few years ago, he was competing for the flyweight championship. 4 years ago now, and we're looking at a fighting for your job situation here. He lost to Sergio Pettis, Benavidez. He's had some really tough fights, but... I don't think he was ever on that level, even though he made it to that title fight. He beat Dustin Ortiz and Justin Scoggins, but
I think he was a great fighter, but yeah. MMA mileage.
The thing is,
mileage just caught up to him.
The flyweights that he beat were just like right under that upper echelon, in my opinion. Like Chris Carriasso, he got to the title fight, but he wasn't on that level. Justin Scoggins could have been, but he had a lot of other issues, so he never reached that top level. Dustin Ortiz has almost been there. It's like the Formiga situation where he can't piece together 3 straight wins, so he can't be there. But then he fights Sergio Pettis, fights Joseph Benavidez, he fights John Dodson, he fights Demetrious Johnson, and he falters. So this is a real opportunity for his opponent to step up and be able to say immediately, I beat a former flyweight title challenger.
Yeah, I mean, Moraga has been fighting since 2009, coming up on 8 years in November. He's put in the work. It kind of reminds me, is he like one of those fighters that, in the old school shoot-a-box sort of way where they would just absolutely beat the crap out of each other during sparring, where then you start realizing later on in your career, you're going to start paying for it. That's what it seems like to me. So, you look at his opponent. He's 13-1. He's never competed in the UFC. He's on a 6-fight win streak outside of the UFC. A perfect opportunity to say, "Hey, here I am. I'm announcing my my entry into the UFC's flyweight division. I just took out a top contender, like you said." So, it remains to be seen. You go up and down. Vince Pichel's been around for a while. Him and Damian Brown will be the final fight before we head into the main card. But I don't know what to say about the rest of this card when you look at it. It's going to be one of those things where you're like, who? But it's these types of fight cards that are fantastic. Sometimes they give us the best fights, and it's like a tree falling in a forest. If no one is there, does anyone hear it? That's what it could be like.
And Pichel's fighting for the first time in 3 years?
Yeah, it's been a while, man.
So here's the thing. It's like Anthony Njokuani was his last fight.
May 2014.
Yeah, so he's been under UFC contract for 5 years and has fought 3 times. So that's
3 times, yeah. He was on The Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, and Damian Brown's been very active in that time. Damian Brown was a guy who I remember seeing his name pop up on Australian local results all the time in 2014, and I was thinking, this guy's got to hang it up because he lost 4 in a row, 5 in a row. Something happened in 2015 and shot through the roof. He put it together. It just shows you it's never too late. 10-8.
Yeah.
10-8, and he was 28, 29 years old. That's the type of age when you got to start figuring it out if you want to make it as a pro. And he's won his last 2 fights in the UFC, and become a fixture on these Australian shows. I'm leaning towards Damian Brown here because he's been more active, but hey, we're finally gonna see what some of these hiatuses, like when these people take 2-3 years off. Is it good for them? Is it bad for them?
Well, we know about the ring rust, cage rust. Some believe it's real, some believe it's not real. It does remain to be seen. Frank Trigg. I did speak to Frank Trigg about a variety of things. Love Frank. He travels so much. I just never know where he is at times. Like Elias. It's almost ironic. You got Elias and you got Frank Trigg, who you never know exactly where they are at any one point in time. But I did get a chance to catch up on Frank Trigg. I wanted to ask him specifically about what happened at UFC 212. His thoughts on, I didn't want to sit there and disparage Mario Yamasaki, but I know Frank has this almost like internal beef with Yamasaki, because it was Yamasaki that didn't stop the fight versus Matt Hughes when Matt Hughes was basically out, and that could have changed Frank Trigg's career, life. Millions of dollars he lost because that fight ended up being the momentum swung. He ends up getting choked out, and he's like, man, if you'd have just stopped the fight, I would have been the world champion. Life could have changed. Millions of dollars, yada, yada, yada. Frank then becomes a ref, and then we see Yamasaki in the fight, versus who was it? Johnny Eduardo was just getting his skull caved in, and he wouldn't stop the fight. Yeah. So I contacted Frank. I said, Frank, man, we got to talk about this.
And that you did, guys. Frank Trigg back on the Fightful Holy Smokes MMA podcast.
All right, Frank, I'm not here to disparage Mario Yamasaki. I know it could be a sensitive topic to you sometimes because you and I have talked about it on numerous occasions, how he cost you $1 million, and that Matt Hughes fight would have been a career changer. But I thought I would ask you, based on what happened in Brazil, the Matthew Lopez versus Johnny Eduardo fight. I had tweeted out that, I almost felt like Eduardo took an extra 15 to 20 punches before Mario said, that's enough. I want to get your thoughts on what you recollect in that fight and the whole situation.
So I haven't talked to Big John McCarthy. Whenever there's a what I perceive as a problem in the reffing or a mistake in the reffing, whether how small it is or how big it is, I call John. Well, John just got back Sunday from Brazil. Today's Monday, obviously. You gotta give him a second to catch his breath. So I don't want to bombard him right away. But obviously, I mean, everyone that knows the sport realizes that was way too long. It was way after the stoppage. I was actually yelling at the screen, and then probably 20 punches later before he stopped it. Like, stop the fight. The guy's done. Like, he's not moving. He's done. But that's not necessarily, mind you, first you have to give Mario the benefit of the doubt. He's there. He's sitting right there. He has a better view than we do. He might see some of the guys defending himself. He's moving around. He's trying to get himself out. We saw it later on with the Aldo Max Holloway fight in the championship bout, where Aldo literally is underneath, covering himself up, looks at Big John McCarthy, turns his head and goes, I'm fine, and then turns back down and keeps getting bombarded. So as a result, that fight kept going, but we saw that at home. It was clear on the camera. That's what was happening. With the Eduardo fight, there was nothing clear. So you have to give Mario the benefit of the doubt that he saw something that we didn't see when he was there. But for me, sitting on my couch in Hawaii, watching it with my friends, it was a very late stoppage. And this is not the first time that Mario has done this. It's been a couple times that he's had some late stoppages. Fortunately enough, no one's brain has popped out of their ear. So we kind of have to wait to see what happens. If this is a thing, when I talked to John, he says, yeah, it's a problem. Then he's already talked to Mario about it. He probably talked to him 35 seconds after the fight was over, had a conversation with him. And then in the post-fight, when all the refs get together and talk about what happened throughout the night, and the judges get together, talk about the scoring, because the scoring was a little weird down there as well with some of those fights, that they all have to go through all their game plans. But yeah, it's an issue. And let's be honest, that fight with Hughes, when Mario, when Matt was out, and then he ends up beating me anyway, I went through the whole process of, like, this is one of the reasons why I ended up becoming a ref, because there are guys out there getting screwed. And not just losing money, but shortening careers because you're getting beat up for too long. It is a problem. It's a serious problem, but it's fixable. It's not like somebody got their arm broken or somebody got their leg broken because they didn't stop the submission fast enough. It's just took some extra damage, but it's fixable. Mario can definitely fix the issue if he needs to. But we'll see what happens. Like I said, I got to talk to John to find out exactly what I didn't see, because I'm looking through the TV. But as of right now, man, that was a late stoppage, and I hope when I'm reffing, I don't have that same problem. That I do get through and get all the protocols right to stop the fight within 3 or 4 punches of when it needs to be stopped.
Absolutely. You mentioned Max Holloway, and you live in Hawaii now. I want to know what your thoughts are on his incredible performance versus Jose Aldo Jr. and what kind of impact does Holloway have on the island? Is he that big of a star?
Well, UFC sent PR people over to meet Max when he landed. They were in Vegas, and they wake up to a text, hey, you're leaving for Honolulu in like 8 hours. Get your shit packed. You're going. And so they're in Honolulu. I know Paige was one of them. I don't know if other people went with her, but she just woke up and was like, hey, I got to go because Max is coming home to Honolulu. This is like a big deal now in Hawaii. There hasn't been a champ in Hawaii since, and a lot of states can go, look, we've never had a champ. So what's it matter? Like what does it really matter? But if those people don't understand how Icon and just in a Super Brawl and all these other, X1 Now and Destiny Now that are continuing to fight. There's fights almost every weekend in Hawaii. There's smaller fights, they're pro fights, but there's a lot of fights going off in the state of Hawaii that people fly in from all the other islands, from Maui and from Kauai, and they come over from the Big Island. They all come over and fight in Oahu specifically for these fights. Like, it's a big deal. We haven't had a UFC champ since BJ Penn. It's been a long time. There's a lot of great fighters out there that people don't realize that are from the islands that still fight. Travis Brown is one. Brad Tavares, another one. Of course, there's several in Bellator. I mean, there's like 12 or 13 high-level pros that are fighting out of the state of Hawaii right now. It's a huge state for fighting. It's a big state for fighting. And so with a guy like Max Holloway, who's a young kid, he's barely 21 years old. He's a great kid. He's very polite. He's very respectful, but he's very matter-of-factual. He's very honest. He lets you know, hey, what's going on. That post-fight speech, I want money and I want the UFC to come to Hawaii, are two things that he's been pushing for years. That he deserves to get paid now as the true champ. That he does deserve to get more money because he is that champ, and it does deserve to come to Hawaii. Like they have fights for everybody else in their home states. Why can't it happen for Max Holloway as the champ? And of course, it leads into the DJ problem that's going on right now with Mighty Mouse. So that big letter he came out with. I don't recall any media any PR people ever flying into back to Washington for DJ when he gets home to help him get on the media tour. But they're there helping Max right now. As you and I are doing this interview, Max is right now being put through a media tour in Honolulu. Of course, my good friend Rob DeMello at Channel 2 is the guy that I work with, is one of the first guys in line because he's been such a big supporter of the fight game. But yeah, they're out there supporting Max right now. It's a huge deal for the state of Hawaii. It is. I can't even put it in a measurement of how big a deal it is for him. When he won, when Yancey won, Yancey Medeiros won in the opening bout, fireworks are going off in Makaha, where he's from. Waimate, where Max is from, fireworks are going off when he won. So we're talking about people put together fireworks shows for these two guys in the hopes that they win. That they had fireworks already set up, and when they won, they were lighting them off. And everybody in town knew why. That was like the signal going across the entire island. Oh, over there, that's Yancey won. Whether you watched the fights or not, you knew Yancey won because you saw the fireworks going off. You knew over here when it went off that Max won. Like, you knew it because you saw it. You could be at your job and all of a sudden out your window, you see the fireworks going off. Oh, Max won. Like, the whole state all of a sudden picked up on it right away. I put a post out there. The entire state cheered at once. And it was because things like that go off. It is a big deal for the state of Hawaii. And to be honest with you, if you look at the weight class, other than a rematch with Aldo or Conor McGregor coming back down and challenging for the belt, Max is going to kind of run through the weight class because he's already run through the weight class.
He's got Frankie Edgar, though.
Say again?
He's got Frankie Edgar. That's the fight that I want to see.
And that's going to be an amazing fight, but I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the fight they're going to put together first, because Jose, as the former champ now, gets the right to go, and they've done it before, immediate rematch. And let's not forget, we haven't seen much of Jose in a long time, but he ran the division for a very long time. He's the reason why the featherweights have such a big name. When Conor beat him, obviously gave the featherweights a bigger name, but it was built up because of Jose. It's a huge deal. He might get the rematch, but then you got Frankie Edgar, and Frankie's a tough fight, man. He's a tough fight for anybody. But who knows how that one's going to work out. Max is going to have to spend a lot of time on takedown defense and getting off his back if he wants to win that fight. And that's just the way that fight's going to have to go.
Sir Franklin Trigg.
Love Frank.
Who let him move to Hawaii?
I appreciate it. I'm going to share with Frank, everyone that's on the live chat there, showing lots of love that they miss Frank Fightful. Frank's just a great guy, man. I've known Frank forever, ever and ever and ever. We go way back, and he's always been a close friend and just, a guy that I've known, considering he's fought GSP, who's another friend. But, by the way, I don't think I've made this public yet. So I guess it's the first time I'm going to be mentioning this. I'm hosting a gig with Nintendo and George St. Pierre on Thursday in downtown Toronto. It's for the media. I don't think fans are allowed to go in there, but it has to do with Nintendo, their new gaming console, Switch. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, they haven't given me the talking points just yet. It's a 2-hour gig, but I'll be with George, so I'll be able to get a whole bunch of information, hopefully, from him on the record, off the record. We'll see where it goes from there. Cameras aren't allowed in there unless you're talking about the Switch. So I'll be with George on Thursday afternoon. In terms of Frank,
are you getting me a Nintendo Switch?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think that's part of the deal.
Point.
What is this Switch thing? I mean, come on. I'm not a gamer. I don't know. Actually, I shouldn't say that.
I don't know. My wife is a Nintendo fan. I'm a Sony PlayStation guy. I just got the PlayStation Pro, actually, which is an upgraded PS4. But she's more of a Nintendo girl. I bought her the most recent the Wii U a few years ago, and yeah, I figured Nintendo Switch is the next thing I'm going to buy her, as I'm trying to save up and buy a home.
So here's my issue. As many of you know, I've got a 6-year-old son. He's a mini me. Loves to fight, loves soccer, enjoys hockey. Now sort of got into video games. His aunt got him a DS. He likes the DS. His mom buys him a Wii U. And he enjoys the Wii U. Goes to this birthday party. I don't know if you guys have this in the States. It might just be something exclusive up here that's going to expand. I don't know if I should be mentioning this, but an RV shows up, like a Winnebago shows up to the kids' party, and it's a gaming RV. It's basically the kids go in there. They can hold up to about 30 kids in there. There's screens everywhere, all the different gaming consoles.
Sounds like
everywhere.
an abductor's dream is what it sounds like.
I guess so, yeah. But the kids, so he went to a birthday party and was having so much fun, and he sees the Wii U, which he has, and then he sees, is it called Mario Kart? Mario Kart 8. And he's just going crazy because he's got it on the DS, right? So he's like, Daddy comes with Daddy, he goes, can we get Mario Kart 8? I said, we can get it. You got to earn it. I want to see your report card. I want you to do good at school for a week, and I'll talk to your teacher, and blah, blah. Kid earned it. He earned it. So we got him Mario Kart 8.
Cool. And
we play it and play it and play it. Now, I need to ask you this, because you play games. I don't.
Occasionally.
I play with him. Occasionally. Okay. I play with him whenever he's like, Daddy, would you like to play with me? I said, absolutely. I'd rather be outside playing hockey or soccer, but you did good at school today. We're going to play. Let's play Mario Kart 8. So we play in, I guess, multiple player, 2 players. He whoops my ass.
Oh, of course he does. You don't have
He's
a chance.
6.
You don't have a
He's
chance.
6.
You don't have a chance. No. Not a single chance. I'm surprised that you're surprised.
He's 6.
I don't care. You didn't have a chance. At no point. He probably banana peeled your ass and everything.
Oh my God.
Shot you with a turtle shell. You had no idea what you're walking into.
Like, how am I in 10th or how am I in 4th? And he's always first, second. I'm like, you're 6. You come up to my hip. This is impossible. I can armbar you if I want. I know you're my son, and you're only 6.
I usually stick to sports games. I did buy Tekken 7 last week, though, because I'm a Tekken fan. It's the only PlayStation game I can get my wife to play. But, yeah, I'm a fan of video games.
Okay, so it's not. This is my ego that's talking. Am I correct?
Yeah, oh yeah, you got a huge ego.
But I'm saying my 6-year-old son whoops my ass. Technically speaking, should I not be more intelligent to make the correct decisions?
You should just be proud. You should just be proud.
Oh my God, it's embarrassing. I can't believe again my son whoops my ass like almost every night.
Oh no, my gosh, well now they're 12 and 13, but when they were 7 or 8, I would play newer games with my niece and nephew, and they would just destroy me.
I have a nephew. Every time you hear about a cyber attack or some 21-year-old destroyed this banking infrastructure or busted into the Pentagon, whatever, crazy things, and then another one gets in there and saves the world, blah, blah, blah. Anytime something like that happens, we're texting each other going, was it you? Or he's 13. He's 13. He came to me one day, and this is when I had a realization that, am I getting old, or is this next generation of kids thinking differently than how I grew up? He came to me where it was a big family dinner, Sean. He knows I'm Showdown Joe, and he knows I'm a UFC guy or MMA guy. Could care less. Doesn't care. He's got things to do. And his mother asked me, hey, how's things going? I saw a couple of your videos. Do you still do all your videos? Do you edit all your videos? So, yeah, I got a new one on Fightful MMA. I put it up every Thursday, generally speaking. He's like, I like those videos. You cut them very nice. He goes, even the sports stuff that you do. He goes, you're really editing. And he asked me, he goes, what type of computer do you have, Uncle Joe? I said, well, it's a Mac. Everything I own is a Mac. He's like, he just looked at me with this disgust in his eye. Like I was scum. And I said, what? It's a Mac. They're great for editing and video stuff. And he says to me, he's like, why would you buy a Mac? I said, I need it for work. He's like, they don't get viruses. I said, yeah, I know. He goes, why would you want a computer that doesn't get a virus? How are you supposed to fix it if it doesn't get a virus?
What? That wasn't a real conversation, was it?
I looked at him and I said,
smacked him.
I can't. But I looked at him. I said, you want a Windows-based computer or PC so you can create a virus or get a virus and fix it? He's like, what else is there to do?
Oh, gosh. I hope you DDT'd him into the ground with no remorse.
He's super smart, but like I said,
how old is he?
Joke, he's 13.
Well, he's got 5 years until that ass kicking's coming. 5 years. Little Johnny, what's his name?
I don't want to mention
5 years.
His name. He'll get mad at me, but I'll say this.
Until you catch those hands from Showdown Joe.
But I'll tell you this, though. The running joke, Sean, is, and he's not the only one. I'm sure people in chat, and probably you've got family members of this nature. When these hacks attack, or when these hacks happen, I'm like, was it him? Because he's going to be in the news one day.
Yeah.
He's that smart.
Somebody asked who my go-to fighters on the UFC 2 game are. My two are Luke Rockhold, and actually Alex Caceres is very, very good on that game. If you have somebody that's just striking with you, if you're wrestling at all in that game, then it's Khabib and nobody else, pretty much. You go Khabib. Rockhold is still very well-rounded. His leg kicks kill. Oh, Barboza, that's another one. You can leg kick your opponent pretty much into submission with him. I'm a fan of EA UFC 2. It's pretty good. But
I've
Joe,
been one of those games.
you probably have like Undisputed or like the first EA UFC. The first one was so bad. Oh.
Maybe that's the one I'm in.
Oh, you're in one of them.
I'm in one of them. Yeah, I don't know which one it is though. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Man. I didn't realize that. What the hell?
Yeah.
Are you in like a Canadian version, like as a fighter or like as a personality?
I think you were able to select. I don't know what it was, Sean. I'm not going to lie to you, but apparently someone says, "Hey, man, we just saw your logo and your name in the game," and I'm like, "Okay."
You're the default created character that shows up bald with no facial hair or anything, is just standing there.
Could be. Yeah.
Anything else before we go, Joe? Obviously,
No.
UFC Australia coverage this Saturday. We're going to do our best to bring you a post-fight show. If that thing ends at like 2 in the morning, we're just going to hold off and cover it on Tuesday. But I believe, gosh, somebody says SRS is in WWE 2K17. Yeah, people have created me in that game. And
Really?
they'll send me screenshots of like me fighting Matt Riddle and Shane Helms.
That's awesome.
Yeah, anything else before we go?
Yeah, just from my end, there'll be an article that'll be posted on Fightful MMA and Fightful.com probably within either later today, if not first thing tomorrow morning. Another Showdown Joe rant video will go up later this week, and probably on Thursday before I go see George St. Pierre. And Friday, generally my Fun Bets article goes up there.
Yeah.
It will be a tad difficult this week if these bookies don't give me more fights. So it'll be probably an expansive edition if I only get a main event and co-main event. And for those bookies that may be watching right now, you've already been contacted by yours truly. Whichever one of you guys wants to step up.
Hey,
business.
Get on the train, guys, while you all have the chance. Fightful.com is the place to be. I say this on every podcast. Go over there, use those forums. I love how active they've become. We give you something at Fightful.com every day that you'll never see, whether it be MMA, pro wrestling, boxing. We have different kinds of content over there. But guys, I want to thank you all so much for joining us. We plan on being back Saturday. Like I said, plan. And often plans can go awry. But UFC Australia coverage this Saturday, guys. Join us for that. Till next time, we're out.